When Shinichi and others arrived at the hotel, an unexpectedly large crowd of people was gathered at the entrance. It turned out that they had all come to catch a glimpse of a famous movie star staying at the hotel. Going to the movies had become a very popular pastime by that time in Japan, and it also appeared to be the favorite leisure activity of the Indian people. After checking in, the group went to dinner at a Chinese restaurant. Later that evening, an elderly Japanese entrepreneur who happened to be staying at the same hotel stopped by Shinichi's room. The man had been a good friend of Josei Toda's, and Shinichi also knew him well. Their conversation turned to reminiscence. "Mr. Yamamoto, wouldn't you say that Mr. Toda's greatness lay in building the organizational framework of the Soka Gakkai? I don't think it would have developed to this extent otherwise. This is the age of the organization. Where there is a solid organization, expansion and growth will follow." Shinichi said, "That may certainly be true in one respect, but it isn't the only factor. Organizations are everywhere. Companies, labor unions, they are all organizations. Organizing has its advantages and disadvantages. The more established an organization is, the more rigid and bureaucratic it tends to become." The two went on exchanging views about organizations. Shinichi continued, "If we use the allegory of the human body, the organization itself would correspond to the skeletal structure. So, though indispensable in its own way, the structure itself is not alive. President Toda's greatness, I believe, lay in his continually infusing the organization with fresh life by tirelessly pumping the lifeblood of human warmth through its veins. Practically speaking, he did this by offering encouragement and guidance to each member. To my knowledge, President Toda must have given personal guidance to tens of thousands of people who, as a result, triumphed over the greatest of hardships and dramatically revitalized their lives. The Soka Gakkai's development stems solely from its having provided encouragement to people in their darkest hours, when, for many, the suffering was so overwhelming that only suicide seemed the answer, and helping them resume their lives with courage again through faith. The members didn't love Mr. Toda because he was president. Their profound respect for him came from their personal experiences of opening their lives and becoming happy as a result of his guidance and his encouragement. Consequently, they made personal decisions to choose him as their mentor and devote themselves to activities for Kosen Rufu. Our members didn't follow Mr. Toda because of his organizational position or status. Even if he had resigned as president, he would still have remained our mentor, a Buddhist leader and teacher to all of us. The businessman looked at Shinichi intently, surprise evident in his face. He quietly said, "I see." Shinichi continued, "But people in society don't know that, nor do they make any attempt to understand the hearts and minds of the members. Hence the extraordinary shallowness with which critics and members of the media condemn the Soka Gakkai. You may have a point. I consider myself relatively well informed about the Soka Gakkai, but I wasn't aware of what points you just mentioned. Jealousy was probably behind a lot of that criticism. Jealousy of Mr. Toda and of the Soka Gakkai's size and influence. I was almost jealous of the Gakkai myself, quite frankly. In today's world, there is very little that can't be bought. But you of the Gakkai have created a lofty world of the spirit that cannot be bought or influenced by any base means. No one else can achieve anything like that. That's probably why other influential groups and members of the government are inclined to be vexed and annoyed by the Gakkai's presence and view it as a threat. The businessman expressed himself very candidly to Shinichi. Another thing that attests Mr. Toda's greatness, I think, is that he raised a successor like you. When Mr. Toda died, I wondered what would happen to the Soka Gakkai. But you, Mr. Yamamoto, have splendidly initiated a new phase in its development. Far from disintegrating in mid flight, the Soka Gakkai has grown steadily. Organizations often fall apart when the leader of the previous generation is no longer at the helm. There are probably leaders senior to you in age and length of membership, but you have united them into a single force and led the Gakkai forward. Now you stand poised to expand your sphere of activities into the global arena. Your management skills are truly extraordinary. I want you to tell me how you have gone about winning the hearts of so many people. I don't have any special such tactics or methods. As a representative of President Toda's disciples, I am merely acting in accord with his instructions and trying to realize his vision for the future. All I'm doing is single mindedly striving to protect the members in Mr. Toda's stead. I'm giving my all to this task. Should anyone ever exploit the Gakkai or abuse our members, then regardless of who they are, I will fight them with my life. In answer to your question, you could say that my technique is being utterly selfless. This is what people respond to and support. For Mr. Toda to have a successor like you, Mr. Yamamoto, I am truly envious. The two spoke for more than 2 hours. As he prepared to return to his room, the businessman told Shinichi, "I have learned a lot today. Thank you." The following day, February 6th, the group went sightseeing around the city. First, they visited the Indian Museum, renowned as the first museum in the nation. It featured a vast display of Buddhist writings and sculptures depicting Shakyamuni's exploits in past lifetimes based on stories in the Buddhist canon known as Jataka. There were also several statues of the Buddha. The group was impressed to see that the shape and expression on the face of each image differed slightly with the era and culture from which it emerged. Before returning to their hotel, the group visited a number of other sites, including a Jain temple and the Victoria Memorial, a structure built in the memory of Britain's Queen Victoria. They had been invited to dine that evening with the Calcutta branch manager of a Japanese trading company. They had asked his firm to assist them in purchasing construction materials for the grand reception hall. Shinichi and the others arrived at the branch manager's residence at the appointed time of 7 p.m. The branch manager welcomed them courteously, but they sensed something condescending in his attitude. After everyone introduced themselves, their host said to Shinichi, "We have to focus our sights on the world now, Mr. Yamamoto. All the most promising companies have dispatched personnel overseas. By the way, does Soka Gakkai have any people overseas?" "Yes, quite a large number in fact. We also have chapters in the United States and Brazil." "Oh, is that so? Most of the members are quite elderly, I suppose." "On the contrary, the majority are youth, and they are the driving force behind activities in each area." "Really? Well, you yourself are still quite young, aren't you, Mr. Yamamoto?" "To be quite frank, I thought the president would be someone much older. I hear a lot of your believers are not very well off financially. You must find that very difficult as president, Mr. Yamamoto, being as young as you are." "Both, but youth carries with its promise for the future." The businessman continued in an even more patronizing tone. "Well, in any event, the road to Japan's success in the international arena is acquiring economic clout. Trade is the key, and especially important in the future will be trade with other Asian countries. We'll see an age where the countries of Asia seek Japan's economic cooperation. The region has an abundance of natural resources, and labor is still cheap. To be honest, Asia is a very lucrative market. Doing business here in Calcutta, on the other hand, is extremely difficult. You can't put anything over on them. They say that even the most skilled foreign trader won't be successful here." To hear him tell it, the leading trading companies and large conglomerates were Japan's sole mainstay. He himself, meanwhile, fighting on the front lines of this economic battle, held Japan's dynasty destiny in his hands.